Hello and welcome to this webinar slash LinkedIn Live, where Finn and I want to go into how the top 10% of fractional CMOs build a wildly profitable practice. We've seen it happen. We've seen it happen many times. We've worked with fractional CMOs really at every stage, from just getting started to they've been doing it for a long time and they're doing really well, and everything in between. So today we want to go into the key components of how to make this happen, how to build a wildly profitable practice, and everything that goes along with that. If you have any questions at all, just comment them and we'll either answer them as we go or we'll come back to them at the end. We want to keep this informal, informative, and enjoyable. So who are we? Well, firstly, Finn, if you want to give a quick intro.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. So I've been working as a fractional CMO for the last 10 years, and I also consult with other fractional CMOs as part of the fractionalclients.com firm. As part of that work as well, I'm coaching Inc. 500 founders, and I also live quite a different lifestyle for most people. I divide my time between Edinburgh in Scotland and Boston in the US. And running my own fractional practice allows me to do that. So that's why I'm here, to encourage and help as many other, marketing professionals that are more senior, experienced, and have that high level of expertise enter the game as well, because I can't possibly serve every client that there is, and there's certainly lots of room for everybody, and it's a fantastic kind of time to get involved with the way that work in general is evolving.
Awesome. And for me, I run a company called fractionalclients.com, which if you're watching this, then you've probably heard of. We've worked with way over 100 fractional execs now, running their business development for them on LinkedIn, bringing in leads and helping them actually turn them into brand new clients. We've generated probably closer to $5 million now of revenue for all of the execs we've worked with. We've got some testimonials here from fractional CMOs. Fractional CMOs are the biggest or the most common type of exec that we've worked with. So we have worked with a lot of them. And we've, of course, learned a lot. This is just a few testimonials. We have a lot more from different marketing leaders all over the world. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this, if you want to go into this one, Finn.
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing that we've found working with all the fractional CMOs that we have over the last kind of 3-4 years is that it's never a capability problem. It's not somebody's experience, it's not your expertise, it's not the background or even the market. The real struggle with the practice comes from having that kind of positioning where you can have pricing power, right? Consistency of revenue, scalability, and control over the time and clients. And the struggle that most fractional CMOs have is they just don't know how to position themselves so they're more relevant to a specific segment of the market. So that's what we really want to kind of uncover and talk about today, in terms of how do you actually kind of break away or break through that struggle, because it's not down to how good you are. It's down to how good you are at marketing yourself, presenting yourself in a way which resonates with clients straight away.
Yeah, I think it's a big limiting belief for a lot of fractional CMOs, where they think, or they see other fractional CMOs that are maybe a lot older than them, that have more experience, but that does not at all correlate to how well you can do as a fractional CMO. Maybe in a totally fair and just world, that may be how it would work, but it doesn't work that way. We've seen fractional CMOs in their 30s doing better than people in their 50s. And I think as well, on top of that, sometimes the youthfulness that can come from less experience has its advantages, where you may have more speed with your work, more creativity. You may be better at technology, and you may have more hunger. And I think that's why some of the people that are a little bit actually less experienced have done better than the people more experienced. So when anyone, whether they're young or old, master these four things and build with these four things in mind at the start, they can do it exceptionally well.
Yeah, and I'll say as well as the older person, obviously in this presentation as well, is that it might seem that the younger people are perhaps doing better than yourself. Even though you've got all those years of experience and expertise, like I say, it doesn't come down to capability whether you have more or less experience. It's really down to that positioning piece. So the clear positioning and relevance. That's the first thing that we're going to kind of cover in today's presentation, right? The second thing is defined client profile and boundaries. So, how do you actually kind of create the terms around how you build your practice, And then the important part of that is the enticing offer and engagement model. Like, how do you actually deliver results and, communicate that as well? Like, that's the hardest thing I think a lot of people have, especially when you have a lot of knowledge, is we tend to talk a lot about all the things that we know as opposed to productizing it in a clear and tangible way in which the market truly understands how you can help them. So being able to kind of create that offer and engage people in it it's challenging because a lot of experts suffer from the curse of knowing too much and being too close to it, and not being able to articulate that in a way that really resonates with the market. And the kind of fourth piece here that we want to cover is, a lot of the fractional executives that we've worked with are stuck in that model of, selling what they do and then having to do the work only to come back around to having to sell all over again. So they're in that kind of feast or famine mode, and they don't have that predictable business development engine, which is something that we're going to talk about later on. Okay. And most importantly, we want to build this in a way that supports your life and not consumes it. A lot of people, think that fractional work is, it's great because it's flexible and all those good things, but often they just create, a desk job that they hate all over again when they've tried to escape the change of corporate life and that kind of thing. So those are the 5 things that we're going to dig in today. Freedom comes from structure and discipline, and we're going to give you a few of the kind of insights and shifts that you need to make in order to make your fractional practice something that you actually enjoy doing. Because when we enjoy doing something, we do it more, and that's when it's easier to scale as opposed to being stuck in that feast and famine mode.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is when you build with these 5 things laid out from the start, you do better and you bring in more clients and better clients, etc. But you enjoy it more and you do it all more confidently. Like, it's easier to get up and go to work and all of that kind of stuff. Whereas I think a lot of fractional execs don't have some of this laid out, and then their work just becomes, it sort of consumes them and a lot of other bad things. So even though these things are kind of foundational and maybe seem obvious, you'd be surprised at the amount of fractional execs that kind of haven't even given much thought to 1 or 2 of these before they delve into trying to sign clients and make a business from it.
Okay, so the clear positioning and relevance piece, how do we actually kind of shift into that relevance mindset? So we want to move from a numbers game to a magnet model. All right. So distilling it down, we're looking at the volume trap. All right. So chasing every marketing lead just to stay busy, just to get the business, just to make sure that you're getting the work in, versus attracting the right leads through deep relevance. And that's, I keep mentioning the word relevance. That's the number one metric when it comes to marketing. That's how you measure your marketing, is through relevance, rather than looking at things through, cost per acquisition or cost per lead and all those kind of, more kind of numeric based metrics. We really want to look at it from a point of relevance. It's like, how connected are you to the problem that people have? Because that's when you can really communicate in a way that resonates I use that, I use that word resonates a lot in terms of that's when you find alignment with the right people in the market. Once you've found that alignment, that's when people will naturally come, because you become known for knowing something rather than just, trying to become known because your picture is, pasted across social media and LinkedIn and that kind of thing. Becoming known for knowing something specific means that people actually understand how it is that you can help them before they've engaged you, you know? So that's where, the kind of market blur comes in as well, is when you serve any industry that has a budget, you don't really kind of hone the skills or the comprehension or the specialism that's required to be really, really good in the top of your game. So I find a lot of people, especially when they come from corporate, they might have had a specialist background or been within a specific industry, but they try and go wide to try and diversify the amount of opportunities that they have, versus owning a specific niche or business outcome. So when you actually kind of own a specific niche, it makes it much easier to become the only obvious choice to a specific, style of business, right? Rather than trying to compete with all the other CMOs, this is the choice gap, and trying to, you know, compete across multiple markets and that kind of thing. It basically creates a red sea, a red ocean that we would call it. It's just kind of full of sharks. You're going to be outpriced sometimes by people who can do something that's cheaper, perhaps. But when you do the same thing, I think it was Bruce Lee that said, I don't fear the man that's practiced 10,000 kicks one time. Fears the man that's practiced one kick 10,000 times. And that's where the real kind of discipline comes in, where you can build that strength and specialism, which is really, really, that's valued by the industry, right? So being the only logical choice for the client is the best place to be when it comes to your positioning, right? And that brings me on to the labor loop. Selling your hours and marketing tasks, it's like when you're just charging for time, it becomes a race to the bottom, right? So doing that versus selling high value business results, the thing is you're going to have the confidence, because when you're doing the same thing over and over again, you're developing that library, and all those case stories of results that you've been able to get within that specific niche or niche in the US. So those are the kind of things that really kind of create that shift from a relevance point of view and makes things much easier. But it's like we're kind of saying before, is that freedom comes from discipline, so the discipline element of it is what makes it easy, but it's hard to do the discipline part, so doing the short-term difficulty creates long-term ease.
And to add to that, the getting positioning right, I think, is really tough. Like it's not always easy. For some people it's easy and it's obvious, and it's they almost don't even have to think about it. It just comes to them naturally. But for others, it can take multiple iterations to get the right, product market fit, if you will. And it's something that you can't just kind of guess and hope for, but once you get it, it's like maybe even the biggest lever to bring in a lot of great clients. We've certainly seen that with some of the people we've worked with, where changing something like the outreach messaging or the targeting slightly or the sales process, they just have minimal effects and they really don't do much at all, because the positioning's wrong, which is really the first pillar to get right. And then when you do get it right, it's like swimming with the current, as opposed to against the current. Everything else just becomes so much easier. Would you say, Finn?
Yeah, 100%. And just to echo what Stuart's saying there, we've seen it with experienced people that have come in and have struggled to get results before. And that's the thing, is it is an iterative process, but throwing spaghetti multiple ways just to see what sticks isn't the way in which you get there, right? There's a way in which you can actually, test and validate the kind of strategic decisions you're making when it comes to your go-to-market strategy. And we'll talk a little bit later about that as well. Okay, so The struggle that, this brings us on to our kind of second point is not having that defined client profile and boundaries, right? So when we're trying to serve everybody, we're really serving nobody. And that's why our message doesn't connect with any specific market or specific customer, right? So the speed trap being, you take a 3K a month client who's, is a bit scattered, a bit all over the place because you need the cash flow. But now you're stuck with 4 extra meetings a week, doing low level work. And that takes up your time, so you don't have the bandwidth to look for the real opportunities. So we often get sucked into things because we think we have to, and a lot of the time we need to because bills need to be paid and that kind of thing. But we never actually get out of that that kind of Ferris wheel of doing that kind of low level work, which isn't really kind of engaging us and isn't really kind of utilizing the real skills that you have and the unique selling proposition that you actually bring to the market. So the power of choice is great, and this is what you achieve when you push over that first domino, which is the positioning piece. You decline that 3K client because they don't have the right team in place or they're not a great fit for you, and that leaves room for the perfect fits, right? Something better is always going to come along at some point. The challenge is that you just don't know when, right? But when you're set up properly and you're able to charge proper, reasonable rates, the premium rates that we're going to be talking about as well, that allows you more choice, right? And it's better to be choosing clients than having to chase them, right? Because chasing clients and that don't get back to you on time and then blame you for not getting results and that kind of thing, that's just draining, and it just makes you not want to do what it is that you're setting out to do. So going back to what I was saying before, we do more of what we enjoy doing. So working with great clients means that we want to do it more.
Yeah. And I think with this, sometimes we certainly work with people that are coming from a place of desperation. And it's very hard to sign the right clients when you're in a place of desperation. So that's kind of the biggest thing that we've seen. Whereas if you're not in that situation and you actually do have time and you can choose from your options, it's so much easier to then operate from a power or from having the power of choice than when you are desperate, basically.
100%. So next up, the enticing offer and engagement model. All right. So this is really, really important because the both of them are connected, right? So what you're offering and how you deliver that offer should be seamless from A to Z. All right. The challenge is when you have that bespoke trap of consistently coming up with different offers and when you're being consultative and trying to create different outcomes for different companies, there's never a linear process because you're doing something different every time, right? Even the most experienced and knowledgeable experts are going to make mistakes sometimes, but they make less mistakes when they have a process that they're following over and over again. Okay. So that trap of, creating a unique custom solution for every new client, that's going to drain you. It's very much going to take up your bandwidth and you're not going to be able to scale that. Inconsistent outcomes and zero operational efficiency. Well, that just kind of speaks for itself in terms of like, if you're doing something different all the time, you're either going to win or you're not. And you're probably going to win less because you're doing something different all the time. There's so many things that are outside of your control, but when you're doing things consistently, from a process perspective, you're going to get, a systematic process, you're going to get the same outcomes and results the majority of the time. All right. And that's going to lend itself to the kind of case studies and testimonials that you're able to get from your clients, which enhances your positioning. Okay. And starting from zero with every project, it does prevent you from building that library of proof, that we're talking about there. When you're unable to speak about results that you've got for somebody else before you start working with, a client that you're excited to get started with, it puts you on the kind of back foot, because it means you've then got to prove yourself. Whereas if you've got the proof up front, it makes it much easier at the selling stage. So becoming that productized expert, you're selling a standardized, repeatable engagement model because that's what you get great at. and people want great that they're not really going to value good or okay, you know. Predictable wins and high impact social proof makes it much easier to market yourself and at the selling stage as well. So, social proof is a great thing to use at the marketing and the sales stage of your process. And consistent results generate specific testimonials. So you're not just getting, I recommend Finn to work with somebody else. Like that's just a character reference, you're getting specific measurable outcomes which people can go, that's what I want as well. And if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. Like that's what people want to follow. So the more concise we can be about the results that we produce, like I say, those measurable outcomes, the more people can actually zero in on how it is you can help them.
Yeah. It's a very easy, quick win as well to go back to previous companies or previous clients you've had and get a testimonial where you did a great job. I think a lot of fractional execs don't get enough testimonials when they could. Like they do a great job for a lot of different companies, but they just don't ask for that social proof, which sometimes you do need to ask for. Otherwise, you don't get it. But once you do have it, it makes selling a lot easier. And if you can make your offer even just decent, like I think so many fractional CMOs just have such crap offers that there's really been no time that has gone into creating it. And on top of that, the way they present the offer to their prospects is horrific. And it doesn't seem valuable, it doesn't seem interesting, and it leads to a really bad close rate as well. So, two quick wins are getting testimonials and using case studies from companies you've already worked with, and figuring out sort of with our help as well, what the right offer is for your market and how to present it in a way that actually comes across is very exciting and makes people want to sign up for it.
Okay, so the big thing is how do you actually get in front of those clients, those perfect clients that are great to work with at the premium rates. You need to develop a pipeline, because without a pipeline, you don't have the privilege of choice, So that's something you need to prepare for, right? So the sell-do cycle, the revenue roller coaster, you stop hunting to deliver work because your pipeline is dry, dries up every 90 days, because the nature of fractional work is that it's always going to be temporary to an extent, right? There's never going to be stability there. And that's good. The great thing is about fractional work is that it allows you variety, it means that you're not necessarily getting stuck in old patterns and that kind of thing. You're challenging yourself. You're upping your game by getting a fresh perspective from solving new problems and that kind of thing. So what you really want is something automated. You want that always on pipeline, authority driven system that runs in the background while you're delivering for your current clients. So it gives you peace of mind that yes, when this project ends, or if a situation with a client changes, it's not going to impact you in the detrimental way that it typically does when you don't have a pipeline. So there's that desperation chase as well. So when work ends, you're forced to chase any lead with a budget just to stay afloat. And that's when it comes to picking up those lower level kind of problems to solve at those lower rates as well. When you have that power of selection, your pricing can be a great way of qualifying people out. Can't afford me yet, you're not ready for me yet. So a full pipeline gives you the ability to walk away, that walk away energy, which is actually really, really good when it comes to selling as well, because that's going to magnetize people towards you, right? And that's when you become part of the 10% of fractional CMOs that do the best in the game, but it is the top 10%, and these are the building blocks in which to get there.
Yeah, I think the big gap there between the 90% more average fractional CMOs, they sometimes do get busy, but then when they get busy, they turn off the pipeline and they're on that seesaw of they're super busy, and then now they don't know where the next client's coming from and what's going to happen next. And I think that is a symptom of either having too low pricing, where you're actually getting so many opportunities, but you still don't have room left to grow. So it's a symptom of bad pricing, but also just setting up your fractional CMO system, setting up the business in the wrong way. Whereas the 10% that we've seen that do really well, they always have a system where they can just bring in more leads, and it's like, it doesn't really matter how busy they get. They use that new pipeline, use those new opportunities to get to the next level, which is very impressive. But 90% of people don't do that, which is daft.
So all that good stuff, we don't want to become busy fools, right? We don't want to be tied to a desk. There's a reason that you got into the fractional game or consulting game. And if you ever have worked for, corporate before, what you really want is the freedom, So there's a reason that you stepped away from that lifestyle. It's like, if you want to work hard or be busy all the time, it's much easier to get a job with a company, right? Much more security, all of those things. But those things that you craved while you were there, the freedom, you're not going to get. So the way in which we do that is by looking at creating a model that supports the life that you want. All right. So the top 10% of fractional CMOs, they look at their non-negotiables and they build the practice around that. So things like travel, family, and their health, that's the thing that they prioritize first. And then the work then supports that. And what's really good about that is that when you look at it from that point of view, it allows you to understand, how much do I actually need to make, right? How much time do I have to spend in which to do it as well? So that's a great way of understanding what your rates need to be in order to support the lifestyle that you want as well, So getting to the freedom stage isn't a destination. It's not something down the line that once I've worked hard enough, then I'll get freedom. You prioritize the freedom, and then you work out what you need to do to support that. And whether that's realistic or not is something that you evolve with and create over time, but you create that space for the freedom first, and then fill in the gaps with the work side of things. So like I said, in my own kind of personal case, I like to travel. I travel out to Boston once a month. I spend the rest of my time here in Edinburgh. And so I book flights and things like that as a priority, 1 or 2 months ahead, because those are usually the best prices. And that's where my kind of schedule is able to fit in around that as well. So I block off the time in my calendar and so forth to do the things that are important to me, rather than, wait until, when am I going to get a gap in my calendar to go and do the things that I want to do, because that never happens. So prioritization is key.
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest maybe misconceptions for fractional execs, where they think they have to do really well to then earn the freedom as a product of doing well, when it's really the other way around. You have to start with the freedom and the boundaries and then create within that. Because I think if you don't, then the goalposts always move. If you don't start with that freedom and that framework, then you start to do well, and then you still don't have the freedom, and then you sort of push it down the line. So this is definitely the better way to do it, and it does help you bring in less of a desperation mindset that we were talking about earlier, that really doesn't serve you at all.
Yeah. And if you don't start with what you want, you always end up with what you get, and that's why most people end up dissatisfied with what it is that they're doing, because they're trying to use what it is that they're getting to then get what they want, So starting from that place of being clear about what it is that I want, why am I doing this? That's going to create the momentum and the pull forward in order for you to achieve that as well. So rather than, running away from being busy or being low in energy, and trying to outrun that before you can get freedom, creating that freedom first is a fantastic pull and motivator to create the lifestyle that you want, imminently, as opposed to waiting for that destination to come. All right. So we're going to talk about commanding premium pricing. So this is really, really important because, you know, with freedom and choice, you know, you're going to need the foundations to back that up. All right, because it's very difficult to have choice and freedom when you don't have those resources there. You know, and you know your pricing and your finances, that's really a resource. So the way that you achieve premium pricing is having that clear category and specialization. Okay, results and outcomes that are specific, not deliverables. Okay, the authority and credibility signals. If you don't have, or, you know, if you're not known for knowing something specific or you can't demonstrate that, that's not going to signal anything to your target market. Okay, you need to have confidence in value and delivery model, right? So that confidence in the value is what comes across when you're selling as well, right? So people always buy the confidence in what it is that you're actually selling. Okay. And when you have that strong client qualification, it means that you're making sure that people aren't coming, you're like the doorman to your business, right? You're making sure that people don't get past that are going to cause problems and take you away from you know, the kind of lifestyle and the things that you want to achieve. All right. So the most important thing to take away from today's presentation is that the top 10% of CMOs, and if you want to become one, they don't win or they don't compete on price. You know, they win on relevance. Okay. They don't try and lower the price. They don't offer discounts and so forth to try and entice people. You know, we're not in a supermarket. We are people that are confident in what it is that we do because we do it well. And we only do it well through focus and repetition. All right. So premium is earned through clarity. And that clarity is when you're able to focus on something consistently.
So true.
Okay. So building that predictability, top fractional CMOs that we work with build stability through, you know, a consistent authority-driven business development system. Okay. They want a defined pipeline, long-term structured client engagements, repeatable positioning and messaging, and owning their client acquisition. All right. So these are the kind of nuts and bolts to creating that predictability. All right. Because predictability, that removes the doubt and it's going to create the confidence in how you move forward. You're going to move forward with more intention and more ability to predict what's going to happen next. You know, the worst thing is so when we have uncertainty, we make terrible decisions, right? So moving forward with certainty means that you're making great decisions on the fly over and over again. That's going to build confidence. It's going to build trust with your clients as well, and it's going to put you in the most positive mindset so that you can deliver the best of yourself.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things, I think, with the fractional work where there's so many things out with your control that you can't always predict sort of exactly how many clients are going to come in because it's ultimately down to them. But if you have a steady pipeline, especially, then you know that it's going to sort of even out to a certain number over a certain, you know, quarter or couple of quarters. Whereas when you have the on and off pipeline system where when you don't have clients, you put it on, and then when you do have clients, you turn it off, it creates so much unpredictability. So I think from, you know, some of the stuff we've got listed there, the biggest thing is keeping the pipeline, keeping the, you know, system to bring in new leads always on. I think that's the biggest pillar there.
Yeah. And even if you do need to turn it off, it's like being able to turn it back on again and know it's going to work. Like that is what kind of breeds confidence, you know? You know, it'd be a great position to be in where it's like, you know, you're full up with work and you've got even a waiting list and that kind of thing. But if you need to come back to it and turn it back on again, then you know it's going to work. And that's the thing, is that certainty, that knowing that things are going to work, knowing that you can move forward and choose how much you're going to work, how you're going to work, when you're going to work, where you're going to work. You know, that's a fantastic position to be in.
Yeah. So these are kind of, this is, I guess, how we would summarize the top or the most important things, the most important pillars to get you sort of into that top 10%. We asked ourselves, from working closely with over 100 fractional leaders, how can we enable someone to build a fractional CMO practice that has clear positioning, has premium pricing power, predictable client flow, the ability to choose clients, not chase them, all with a very scalable, repeatable delivery model. Because, we've talked for 35 minutes or so today. We've barely scratched the surface. Like, you can hear from everything we touch on, there's so much more to go into. And we'll probably do some other webinars, going into specific things that we've touched on today. But we asked ourselves, how can we sort of provide that type of solution so that someone doesn't have to figure it out alone, but also so that they don't have to spend, thousands every month on support and without taking risk on something that, might not work, which is always the sort of dreaded outcome. So we built a simple solution to sort of take you there effectively. Something that lets you learn one-on-one from one of the most experienced fractional CMOs, which is fun. Use proven copy and paste frameworks, templates, and marketing assets, again, that we've concluded, built together, from over 100 high-performing fractional execs. Run effective outreach without having to pay for external automation tools like Dripify or HeyReach or anything like that. To also build authority through LinkedIn video presence, which is a huge lever to bring in better leads, and ultimately to sign more, better, and high-paying clients, which is really the mission of, I guess, what we're doing at Fractional Clients. It's everything that you would need to excel as a fractional CMO and ultimately build the practice you've dreamt of. Again, without having to navigate it all on your own, without having to sacrifice anywhere near the upfront cash that some of the other fractional CMO programs are asking for, and without taking on any unnecessary risk. It's all inside our new Fractional CMO Accelerator. We've literally just launched this. It's brand new, which means the pricing and the guarantees and the bonuses are insane. If you're interested, book a call. I'm just going to drop in our Calendly URL right now so that if you're listening, you can book a meeting. And yeah, we don't want to pitch it too much. We don't want to go through it here because this is value driven and not sales. But if it sounds interesting, book a meeting. We would love to talk to you about it and see if it's a fit for you. No hard selling, just a call to walk you through it and see if it's a fit. And I promise you won't regret it. Finn, any concluding statements before we wrap up?
Yeah. So if you're not sure on whether it's something that's right for you or you'd like to book some time, you can also DM me or Stuart directly just to ask a few kind of upfront questions. And if it's a good opportunity to speak, then we'll be happy to invite you on the call if it's something that's going to be worthwhile for you. Okay. The great thing about it as well is that there's no obligation. You're going to get a lot of insights. It's me they're going to be speaking to. So I'll be happy to share some insights on your immediate situation. So worst case scenario, you'll go away with some new information which you can think about, try and implement within your own business and that kind of thing. But the big thing is that the reason we've set this up is because trial and error is the biggest time waste, the biggest time suck ever, and the number one kind of resource that we have, it's not money, it's time. Okay. And the amount of time that we waste not doing things is time that is being taken from ourselves. It's almost like we're stealing from ourselves. So we've created this in such a way in that it's accessible to most. And, like Stuart said, it beats the majority. I would probably say out of all the market kind of research that we've done, because we're very, very good at that, is a lot less expensive, a lot more cost effective to start this way if you're just starting out. or you want to, add fractional services as part of your existing consultancy or agency. Okay. We've designed it in a way in which it is that lower barrier to entry, but able to kind of get to that top 10% positioning faster than you could, and you're not going to be able to pay more to go faster. And like this is like we've actually built the fastest route to market for people who are interested in becoming a fractional CMO, in a way which is not only effective to your clients, but effective to your lifestyle as well. So I look forward to speaking to you and finding out a little bit more about your practice and your desires and the things that you're looking forward to doing and perhaps don't know what to do or in what order. So yeah, please send us a message if you are interested, and I look forward to talking to you.
Awesome. Well, for all the viewers and listeners, thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you in the next one.
Okay, cheers.